The most beautiful arena was home to one of the most brutal Hunger Games. Its victor, Haymitch Abernathy. So what do you get when you mix a young, snarky boy, the memory of the Mockingjay, and one of the Capitol's darkest mistakes? They'd do anything to bury. When it comes to the upcoming Hunger Games book Sunrise on the Reaping, we've received a teaser, cover reveal, insights about the inspiration for the story, a brief plot synopsis, and even a small excerpt. But when it comes to the story itself, we know very little. But by piecing together what we know, as well as context clues from the main series, I may have figured it out. Part 1 introduces Haymitch, his life in District 12, and the other tributes. It culminates in a shocking reveal. Haymitch has been set up to fail. Part 2 would follow Haymitch's journey through the games, leading to his victory. We'd see the games unfold, with the focus on themes rather than the usual bloodbath. But don't be turned off by that, because it will get bloody. Part 3 will be tragic. We watch the Capitol spin the narrative and bury Haymitch's legacy. The districts can no longer tell what is real or not real. A big part of that will be the Capitol using propaganda to spin the narrative. One way they'll do so is by turning Haymitch into something he's not, by killing his loved ones. They figure he's worth more alive, so he can forever be a message of what happens if you defy authority. Yes, Haymitch is a tragic character, and in this book, he will brutally learn who the real enemy is. In Catching Fire Chapter 14, Katniss and Peeta are preparing for the Third Quarter Quell by watching tapes of previous games. Curious, they watch the Second Quarter Quell, Haymitch's games, as it's the only Quell they have on video. A lot of the details I'm about to discuss for this theory are taken from that scene, but all of the characters' thoughts and motives are my own speculation. While much of what I'm about to say is factual, it's safer to assume everything here is purely theoretical. There is so much we can unpack, but before we begin, I want to say thank you for the support the channel has gotten over the past couple weeks. With Sunrise on the Reaping coming out so soon, there is so much to talk about, and you won't want to miss it. Subscribe if you aren't already. And I just made an Instagram. I'll be more interactive over there with you and the videos I'm working on, so check it out if you're interested. Isn't it crazy that it's coming down to just days away now that we'll finally get more insight into Haymitch's games, maybe the origin of the Mockingjay as a symbol, and possibly the early beginnings of the Second Rebellion, or at least Haymitch's early thoughts on rebellion. But perhaps the most exciting thing is that author Suzanne only writes when she has something to say. She shared her motivations for writing Sunrise, saying, "The story also lent itself to a deeper dive into the use of propaganda and the power of those who control the narrative." For this book, we're diving deep into propaganda and the theory of implicit submission as proposed by philosopher David Hume. We've already seen propaganda used in the Hunger Games, and while I admit the propos in Mockingjay aren't my favorite part of the series, the atmosphere of Sunrise on the Reaping makes it the perfect moment to re-explore propaganda in a completely different way. Taking place during the 50th Games, the Capitol is taunting the districts with the Second Quarter Quell, and propaganda will play a huge role in keeping them under control. Propaganda is used for many things, and Mockingjay, it's used to inspire the districts, but it could also be a tool for suppression, and it fits perfectly within the world of Panem. I can't wait to see how Suzanne portrays it. So, one way propaganda might be used is through the Quarter Quell. A Quarter Quell is a glorified version of the games, to make fresh the memory of those killed by the district's rebellion. Quells start with a twist on the reaping ceremony, and as gripping as it is for us readers to see something like victors battle it in the arena, it's not without reason. For instance, the Third Quarter Quell reaped victors, as a reminder to the rebels that even the strongest among them cannot overcome the power of the Capitol. This will all tie into Hume's idea of implicit submission, which is essentially people accepting authority without explicit consent. You sort of accept who rules because it's been like that for so long. The Quarter Quell is a great time for that message, as it's celebrating 2 generations since the rebellion's defeat. By having that edge over the masses, the few govern the many. That's the core of the Hunger Games, to remind the districts never to rebel, despite the fact that if they united, they could overthrow their oppressors. In this case, it's a totalitarian regime. As malicious and twisted as the capital is, they're incredibly smart in how they carry out their control. Much of that is credited to President Snow, who is just a fantastic villain. Although the Quarter Quell could be a form of propaganda in Sunrise, I don't think that's the whole picture. Haymitch's games were infamous for his use of the arena's force field to win, which didn't sit well with the capital. Same sort of thing with Katniss, Peeta, and the poison berries. I know, it's always these District 12 tributes making it all about themselves. In retaliation for Haymitch's defiance, they destroyed his family and his girlfriend and hid his games from history, reducing him to nothing more than an alcoholic, broadcast every year to show the people what happens when you defy the capital. When we first meet Haymitch in the book, he's a drunken mess, which broadcast to Panem the way it is propaganda in itself. But was all of this punishment deserved just because he used the force field to win? Unless the capital really hates people who use the force field, I think the answer is no. But that's based on what we know, and we only know it from Katniss's perspective. I'm going out on a limb here and saying I think Katniss is an unreliable narrator during this sequence. After we get our hands on Sunrise, we'll look back and think, okay, I understand why she thought that, but it's not the whole picture. Sunrise on the Reaping could reveal new details that will make Haymitch's punishment seem more deserved. And I think I figured it out. It has something to do with the Mockingjay and the lovely little girl, Maysilee Donner. The twist on the Second Quarter Quell is that it pulls twice as many tributes to remind the districts that 2 rebels died for every capital citizen. The first 2 female tributes are described as a young friend who's nearly a sister to him and the most stuck-up girl in town. These refer to Maysilee Donner and a girl from the seam. Book fans will recognize that name, Maysilee. If you're a fan of hers before the movie comes out, congrats, you were here before it was cool. But who is Maysilee Donner? I believe the title Sunrise on the Reaping might not just refer to Haymitch. It could refer to Maysilee, or at least her impact on Haymitch's journey. Maysilee, in many ways, could be seen as the original Mockingjay, thus the term Sunrise, as it marks the beginning. If Haymitch is the soul of the book, Maysilee could be the heart. She's the bridge that connects Haymitch to the larger themes of rebellion that we see in the later books. So, what's the big deal with Maysilee? Let's take a moment to talk about one of the most important objects in the entire series, Katniss's Mockingjay pin. In the movie, Katniss receives it from Greasy Say at the Hob, but in the book, it's given to her by her friend Madge, who is also the mayor's daughter, just after Katniss is reaped. Katniss doesn't think much of it at first. If anything, she finds it a bit humorous that Madge is concerned of, with all things, a pin. But Madge insists that she wear it in the arena. In Catching Fire, Katniss watches footage of Haymitch's reaping and connects the dots that Maysilee Donner is Madge's aunt and the original owner of the Mockingjay pin, opening up a range of ideas about the meaning behind Sunrise on the Reaping. The Donner family are merchants. They own a sweet shop in District 12. Perhaps they could be of the wealthier families, putting them in a unique position to think more realistically about rebellion. Maysilee is the type who has a pet songbird, so birds certainly are a passion of hers. Fun fact, that bird is given to Katniss's mother after Maysilee's death in the arena. I'm convinced Maysilee will become a fan favorite character, but how significant she is will depend on how Suzanne chooses to structure the book. If she decides to dive deep into Maysilee's character, she could become an important, pivotal character to Haymitch, akin to Lucy Gray to Snow. On the other hand, she could serve as a glorified MacGuffin, important, but not the central focus. Either way, her death will mark the true beginning of the Second Rebellion. And I think the propaganda she's talking about that will have such an importance in this book doesn't necessarily relate to the Quarter Quell, but to suppressing the Mockingjay symbol. In many ways, this book will feel like a true prequel to the main series, giving us either background or, depending how much lore Suzanne is bringing to the table here, actually give us the turning point where the Mockingjay is turned from the idea of capital failure into a rebellious symbol. When Katniss and Peeta are on the train, they see a Mockingjay painted on a wall. Of course, this is far from District 12, so maybe in Sunrise, we get the symbol going mainstream. Now, how would the Mockingjay go mainstream? Through Haymitch and Maysilee's time in the spotlight during the games. Because Maysilee likes birds so much, maybe she mentions the Mockingjay during her interview, to the Capitol's displeasure. Or, here's a scene I made up. It's probably not accurate, but let's say Haymitch and Maysilee are in the arena. Maysilee shares the full story of the Mockingjay, how it began as Capitol failure after the Jabberjays failed to spy on the rebels. This would be the moment we get a full, complete breakdown of the Mockingjay's significance. Not just from Katniss's point of view, but from someone who grew up with it and its idea. If the Donners are part of some underground resistance, which could be why Maysilee's twin married the mayor, she's likely heard dark stories of the Capitol's cruelty and may have clung to the Mockingjay symbol every night as a silent form of resistance. Haymitch listens intently, absorbing every word. As he reflects on what he's just learned, he realizes that he's never heard much about the Mockingjay before. It must be a powerful symbol if the Capitol is trying so hard to suppress it. He begins to make connections between Maysilee's words and his own experiences since arriving in the Capitol, relating to its message. Perhaps this is the fight Haymitch needs to carry forward, a fight that will reverberate far beyond the deadly arena. What if in this moment there's a twist? Haymitch and Maysilee are among the last tributes alive, and with the attention focused on them, this conversation is accidentally broadcast. The Capitol wouldn't broadcast the whole thing, they wouldn't make such a big mistake, but just enough to spark intrigue. The viewers in the district start to see Haymitch and Maysilee as figures, more than just pawns in the games. Even if the conversation wasn't broadcast, the mere fact that the Capitol overhears it would be enough to seal their fates. The idea of defying the Capitol, mocking their control, is treasonous and punishable by death. Whether intentional or accidental, the Capitol would make sure their story ends with cannon fire and their picture in the sky. With the Capitol needing both of them dead, could this be what it means? Haymitch has been set up to fail. Toward the end of the games, they come to a cliffside. Haymitch wants to keep going, Maysilee doesn't, so they break off the alliance. As Haymitch paces, a small pebble slips from the cliff and tumbles downward. He doesn't pay it much attention until the pebble shoots back toward him, and his curiosity is piqued. He picks up a larger rock and hurls it over the edge. To his surprise, the rock rebounds moments later. Haymitch has just found the force field at the edge of the arena. Suddenly, a scream pierces the air. It's Maysilee. There are only 5 tributes left. Haymitch, Maysilee, the girl from District 1, and 2 others. What's the point in saving anyone at this stage? But he caves and runs toward her cries. When he finds Maysilee, she's surrounded by a swarm of pink birds with long, needle-like beaks that are piercing her neck. Haymitch desperately swats at the birds, but it's too late. Maysilee's breaths are shallow as she lies in his arms, throat slick with warm blood. Then, silence. Here's where we use context clues to read between the lines of her death. What if Maysilee and Haymitch's conversation about the Mockingjay was, in fact, accidentally broadcast? Or it could happen in a different way. Needless to say, somehow it spreads across Panem. Could it be the Capitol's doing that Maysilee met her end by a flock of birds, pecking away at the weapon that may have sparked the true sunrise on the reaping, her voice? The Capitol has always been theatrical with its punishments, weaponizing fear and spectacle. Maysilee's death by a flock of birds might have been a message to the people. Silence the Mockingjay before its song spreads. It's sad and twisted that Maysilee met her end by the animals she loved so much. Imagine the heartbreak if she was trying to be friends with them and then they turn on her. Oh, we are not ready. But like many things the Capitol tries to crush, could it have backfired? Could her death have amplified her voice, thus needing propaganda to change the narrative? It eventually comes down to the final 2 tributes, Haymitch and the girl from District 1. She's bigger than he is and just as fast. Haymitch's chances don't look too good. When they finally face off, blood is spilled. Suzanne isn't afraid to write gruesome scenes if needed, and this one promises to be one of the most brutal. They exchange devastating blows that slow the battle. Haymitch manages to stab her eye out while she slashes open his stomach. The battle turns to a race against time as they both bleed out. Haymitch stumbles through the woods, clutching his intestines to prevent them from spilling, while the District 1 girl follows, axe gripped tightly in her hand. In a final burst of strength, Haymitch makes a desperate dash toward the cliff. The girl throws her axe at him, but luck is on his side. His legs give out, he collapses and starts convulsing on the ground. If he stayed like that for long enough, he would die. Without her weapon, the District 1 girl assesses Haymitch's state, figuring she can outlast him. And she likely would have won that bet too, to the Capitol's favor. But Haymitch has only one thought on his mind: stay alive. He lies there helpless but not hopeless, knowing the axe will return. And when it does, it finds its target, lodging itself deep into the girl's skull. Haymitch is declared victor. If this had gone according to the game maker's plan, the District 1 girl would have killed Haymitch, and the Capitol could have branded her as a hero. But it didn't go that way. The Capitol, blinded by their own arrogance, was outsmarted by Haymitch, who used a method they never anticipated to win when they needed his death to be certain. Going back to Katniss being an unreliable narrator, maybe we've been seeing it wrong the whole time. Maybe the Capitol didn't punish him because of how he won, but because he won. And it makes it worse that by using the force field, it made them look like a joke. They threw everything at him, and he still triumphed. No wonder they were furious. Here's what Katniss says after watching that tape. It made them look stupid that he figured it out. I bet they had a good time trying to spin that one. But that's why I don't remember seeing it on television. I would love to see Haymitch's victory tour if he has one. It would be great to see what the Capitol is doing for damage control. But that's a little bit selfish on my part, as the victory tour scene in the movies is one of my favorite scenes, and I just want to see more of Panem. Depending on pacing, we might get a time jump like in Songbirds and Snakes, and see Haymitch with his first tributes as mentor. All the tributes he's mentored until Katniss and Peeta have lost. Many are malnourished and lack the strength to fight. We may see an internal dynamic where Haymitch sees his little brother in the tributes he mentors, and year after year, he watches them die. In theory, Haymitch learns the meaning of the Mockingjay and is inspired by its message. This causes him and Maysilee to be targets in the arena. The Capitol kills Maysilee with bird mutts, and knows the District 1 girl will finish off Haymitch. She absolutely would have if Haymitch didn't use the arena's force field as a weapon. Angered, the Capitol uses propaganda to hide the defiance, spin the narrative of the Mockingjay, and destroy Haymitch's loved ones, so they can forever broadcast the broken man who thought he could rise above. A key unanswered question heading into Sunrise on the Reaping is the fate of the Mockingjay pin. Specifically, how it ends up in Madge's hands before being passed to Katniss. We know that Maysilee dies in the arena, and it's implied that the pin somehow makes its way from Maysilee to Madge. But how does that happen? The boring answer is she probably just didn't even bring it into the arena, and it was just always with the Donners. But the more exciting answer is Maysilee takes the pin in, but before she dies, she hands it to Haymitch. Later, when Haymitch returns to his sad life in District 12, he remembers the pin, a symbol of survival. In the final chapter, Haymitch, in a rare moment of clarity, seeks out Maysilee's twin sister, who has stayed hidden since her sister's death. He returns the pin to the Donner family, telling them it's from Maysilee. Madge, having grown up hearing the story of her aunt's death, will understand the Mockingjay's importance and insist that Katniss wear the pin as her token. This brings Katniss and Maysilee's connection full circle. When Katniss is chosen as the Mockingjay, it's because the rebellion has been quietly growing since the 50th Games, waiting for someone like Maysilee. The ending of Sunrise on the Reaping will be bittersweet. The kind of ending that doesn't provide easy closure, but instead leaves readers with a deeper understanding of the forces that shape the rebellion and the people who become its symbols. Haymitch's journey is one of brokenness, and while he may never fully heal from the trauma of his games, he will carry forward the flame, passing it on to Katniss, making his voice heard far beyond the deadly arena. And they say no one ever wins the games. Once the book releases, there will be so much more to break down and discuss, so consider subscribing if you aren't already. So, what do you think? Does this theory have any merit? Let me know your thoughts down below. I read all your comments and love hearing what you have to say. Thank you all for tuning in to today's games. I'll catch you in the next one.